everyone. My name is Ilona Gabinsky, and this is Aviz Networks Podcast series. Today, we are looking at where the networking market is headed in the AI era, and especially where the software opportunity is forming. I am joined today by Alan Weckel, co-founder and analyst at 650 Group. Alan, it's great to have you here.
Yeah, likewise. It's always a great joy to do these with yourselves.
Thank you. So, Alan, when you step back and look at the AI era, what is the biggest change you see in networking, a total addressable market?
Yeah, there's a ton of changes, and I think I'll share a few slides here to kind of frame just the magnitude of the change. So on this first chart, we're showing the total AI networking market, and the biggest change is the size, right? If we look at AI networking, it didn't really exist prior to the start of the decade, and by the end of the decade, it's going to be larger than $200 billion. And when we look behind the scenes, as we kind of move from the left to right of the chart, we see Ethernet becoming a larger and larger portion of the mix. So what's occurring is there's this huge networking opportunity, more networks, which I think is somewhat unexpected, and then the kind of different speeds and feeds and software angles of that. So if we kind of double click into just Ethernet DC switching, which is the biggest chunk of that AI TAM, you'll notice that it's growing at a 30% CAGR. In my entire career, we've never had markets grow this fast or for as long as they're growing. And this is a mix of hardware and software. And I think that's one of the changes that we look at because we're not talking about one network or just server access. We're now doing AI backend, and there's different flavors of that. The software, the observability, and the kind of need to orchestrate that, kind of get control of more resources than ever and also automate that is the only way that the human can scale or that this TAM can get as large as it is. So it's not just about speeds and feeds, it's about the total solution. And that's what's different as well. And then the third thing on the last slide here is just how big these markets are from an end customer perspective. When we went through the cloud virtualization wave, it was really about the hyperscalers, and then the tail fell off very, very quickly. But if we look at what's occurring now, it's just a huge amount of customers in that Neocloud and enterprise space. It almost gets lost in the chart because it's a pie chart. But if we look at that enterprise number, right, that's incredible growth, something that we've never seen in data center networking before. So it's not just a hyperscaler story or just a foundational lab, frontier lab. It's really about the whole industry, all the customers, and all these different networks coming together. And that's why it's such an exciting opportunity. We're not talking about a small CAGR or small amount of customers. It's much bigger than it's ever been before.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing it. I think the numbers are very impressive. And also, it is true that it's not just for hyperscalers anymore. It's now true for enterprises and smaller companies as well. I just had a quick question on your slide number 2. I think when you mentioned the software and hardware market, it was combined in your slide. So I was wondering if you can share a little bit how much becomes a software and operation story over time and how much of that is hardware.
Yeah, it's going to be it's going to be an increasing percentage. I'd say every vendor monetizes that differently. But the way I think about it is on the right hand side, we're talking about a north of $100 billion TAM. And the software piece, if we were to kind of extract the same value for all vendors, would probably be about 40 or $50 billion. And then obviously some of them monetize that as a solution. So you get a TAM a little bit smaller than that, but it's going to be close to half of this is being valued as software. And then each vendor will kind of monetize that a little bit differently.
Right, right. And which parts of the market, in your opinion, create the largest long-term opportunity?
Yeah, well, it's going to be AI, right? Because AI becomes the larger part of the mix. But the AI opportunity is there, right? You're going to need more and more telemetry in order to understand what's occurring, right? Whether you call these models or cores or processors, right? The number of devices and the number of applications is continuing to grow exponentially. And so you need telemetry data and automation in order to control that and get the full value out of your network and get that value in a secure way. So ultimately, it's going to be AI, but I don't think there's a single part of this chart where you wouldn't say software is a larger part of the mix in a few years than it is today.
Mhm. And speaking about of AI and actually AI in networking, what do you see happening in the market right now? How ready people now to adopt AI specifically for their network operations, or they're still evaluating, or it's like everybody's already adopting AI?
Yeah, I think we're still in the early stages of the AI adoption curve. So a lot more proof of concepts or early adoption pilots than the broad part of the market. Everyone is talking about it and evaluating it, but I'd say that's something that's similar to the previous upgrade cycles, right? We have tech savvy and non-tech savvy customers. And
Hmm.
those non-tech savvy customers kind of need a critical mass at an industry level before they can adopt, right? They're not going to be adopting anything that hasn't been proven out many times before by other customers, etc. So that's kind of where we are in the bell curve. They'll get there, but it's going to take a little bit of time.
Right, right. So at Avis, we think about the software opportunity in three layers. So we see that open networking, deep network observability, and also a private AI platform for NetOps. And if we look at all these three layers, we call it open end-to-end software networking stack. But if we look at these three layers, does it feel directionally consistent with how you see the software TAM forming on top of the broader infrastructure wave? And where do you see more TAM forming rather than the other? I understand you already mentioned AI, but if there is anything you would like to speak about, specifically open network, open software, open networking, deep network observability, and this AI for NetOps.
Yeah, so I think I spent a little bit more time prior on observability, right, which is where telemetry stands. But all three are growing significantly, right?
Mhm.
There's a big push in open networking because we need to be able to have interoperability, whether that's at, say, the switch hardware level or it's at the GPU, XPU level, right? A data center in the future is not going to have a single accelerator and a single networking device in it, right? And open networking kind of expands that so everyone's on equal footing as you add in that additional compute and networking resources. So open networking is growing and kind of is actually accelerating for the rest of the decade compared to where we were in the beginning. I mentioned telemetry a few times prior, but that falls into the observability space, right? Operators need to have a good understanding of what's occurring there, whether that's security based or operationally based. They need to have a good understanding. And so observability becomes a very important part of that, right? What's occurring on the hardware, what's occurring in the application layer, where is the fault? And as we all know in networking, it's always the networking person's fault, but usually it's something else like the server, the WAN, etc. So kind of that route to not being at fault is important. And then the AI kind of ops on top or the AI tools on top are also going to grow. There's no way the human can scale without AI becoming a bigger part of the mix. And that will happen as the customer becomes more comfortable, but we're headed in that direction. So today, that could be something just from an AI front end to verify configs or to provide information, kind of like how we interface with a GPT model. But as we can imagine, that's headed towards self-driving networks, right? As AI gets more, the human becomes more comfortable with that. We're going to be at self-driving networks beyond just the hyperscalers. So each of those software stacks is going to grow and grow significantly over the, we're say, next part of the decade.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. And I have a question. Would really like to double down a little bit on what you mentioned about open networking. You mentioning that you see a much higher adoption rate of open networking rather than what we saw in the past. So why do you think this is happening? What really pushes for that open networking right now? Why people are choosing open?
Yeah, so I think some of it is the maturity in open networking, right? We have a lot of years of valid designs and production traffic to prove that it's of the same quality of what we were doing before, or say from branded or proprietary offerings. And then the
Mm-hmm.
second thing I think was that chart I showed, right? It's not just one network, right? We've got backend, we've got front end, we've got traditional DC. There's a DCI component. When we add in scale up, there's even more. Right. And there's no way for an operator, even if you're the largest hyperscaler, to have each of those be disparate, right? You can't bring all that together no matter how good your orchestration tools are. And so open networking is kind of the enabler to allow you to support AI. So maybe we could have just said GPUs or AI was it, but I think it's kind of an important journey of where we came from and where we are, and that's what's enabling open networking today.
And Ellen, what do you think most people still underestimate where the market is still heading? Where the
Yeah,
market?
yeah, I think people just underestimate the size, right? I mean, if we think about this market, when we first put up $100 billion TAMs, everyone said they were way too high, right? There's no way networking could be this large. There's no way software could be this large, right? It just can't be. But we're changing, right? We're in an industrial revolution for AI, and there's probably another one right after that when we get to physical AI. And so I think people are really underestimating that networking can be this big and can be this important, right? Networking is the glue or the nerve system. A lot of people use different terms there, but it really is the important fabric to connect everything together. And without the network, we wouldn't be talking agentic. We wouldn't be talking foundational labs, and we definitely wouldn't be talking about physical AI as a future wave. And I think that's something that's just understood because networking's been there forever, right? We've all grown up with it, but the importance is increasing each year, and I think that's still underappreciated.
Mm. Helen, it's great to hear all the proof points that actually what all we are doing here at Avis in terms of building new networks for the AI era, helping customers build networks for AI and introduce AI into networks in terms of open networking, deep network observability, and it's great to see that you see this market proofs all across industry, and that's industries and different size enterprises, and that it's not just for hyperscalers. It's been great having you today, Alan. And is there anything you would like to add to the listeners before we finish?
I think we touched on a lot of it. I mean, this is the most excited I've been in networking, and I've been in networking since before I even went to college, right? So not only as an industry analyst, but also, right, as a designer and then as a student. So when you're talking about a market now of 30 plus years and you're more vitalized and more enthused than ever, I think that's kind of a key message to share to everyone listening, right? Like we're just getting started on this new wave, and that's exciting for everybody who's participating.
Right. Ellen, thank you very much. It's been great having you here and look forward to more podcasts with you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.